this roundtable discussion is a continuation of the panel that we just had, and we had a few very interesting papers so far by Ksenia Luchenko, Gulnaz, Alicia, Bojidar Kolov, Alexei Zygmunt, and Christina Sokol. That was the last one. And so in the last, now we have the round table, and I guess that all the participants are already here, or maybe somebody is missing. I will save time. Save time without introducing everybody. Yes, Olga.
Okay, and we miss one participant, and as soon as he comes, we will share the option for microphone, all this.
Okay. Okay, who is missing right now?
I guess Marat Sterin, whom
yes,
I
Marat
see
will not.
Today.
Marat actually wrote to me that he couldn't join us. It was a few days ago because of his
because of his class. I know.
Yeah, of his class. Yeah, so we can start.
Okay. You are welcome.
So we have a few outstanding scholars here on participating in the roundtable: Zuzanna Bogumil, Tomas Bремер, Sergei Chapnin, Vyacheslav Karpov, Nadezhda Kitsenko, Irina Pyart, and Mikhail Suslov. And actually, I will save time for not introducing everybody, all of the participants. So and move to the questions that we have. And these questions actually are some go in continuation to what we have heard so far in the panel. And I would start probably with the question that is connected to what was the last presentation about, and the last presentation by Christina Stöckel was the kind of a attempt to see what's going on in the Ukraine right now, in the Ukrainian Orthodoxy. For those who haven't heard her presentation, she was trying to make it, to see how the two different churches that operate right now, major Orthodox churches that operate right now in Ukraine, are trying to reconfigure their identities in connection to each other, and also to the Russian Orthodox Church in Moscow Patriarchate. So, and that was what Christina was trying to do through her approach to, as she said, as she called it, material religion, some particular elements of religious practices in both denominations that are dominating now in Ukraine. So I would here among the questions that we have the second question for the round table, and I wanted to start with that, to continue with what Christina was saying about Ukraine. For obvious reasons and regretful reasons, of course, we don't have people from Ukraine or Ukrainian scholars with us. But I wanted somehow to start with this question that we formulated for this roundtable. What do we know about how the war sharpened distinct religious identities within the Ukrainian Orthodoxy? What are current developments of the conflict between the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and how the Ukrainian state is involved. This is the last issue is actually something that Christina didn't speak about, or had no time to speak about, so we can expand this issue. So we are proceeding in the following way. Everybody who wants to start, and then we will we'll start, and then we continue switching from one participant to another. So who wanted to start with some reflections about this Ukrainian side, the Ukrainian kind of material, as much as we know what's going on right now? Please. We can't hear you, Olga.
Just to remind that you will have the option to turn on your microphones.
And video as well, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean roundtable participants.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So, who is going to speak first to start the conversation in this roundtable? From the question about the religious identities in and the processes in Ukraine. Or Zuzanna Bogumil is writing that she cannot turn.
Yes, I see.
Uh-huh.
Катя, включи, пожалуйста, видео Сузанне Богумил.
Права есть, можно включить или что, или покрутить презентацию.
So, Zuzanna, you can try again.
Send me, please.
Hello. Sorry.
Hi.
So I am switch on, and all settings are good on my side. So if it doesn't work, probably I will go out and come back. Okay, let's see if it works, because I am blocked from your side as far as my Zoom says to me.
Yes, it's an option.
Okay.
Alexandra, should we continue despite the technical problems?
Okay. Okay. While Zuzanna Bogumil is trying to reconnect, maybe some other participants can join us right now with these questions that I started with, the Ukrainian situation, because that's something that interests me very much, and all of us, I guess. But if we have some kind of considerations about what's going on there. We can go just I wanted this roundtable not to be that's kind of strictly structured. I wanted that everybody could join at any moment. So if you have some ideas, please do. Or if you have, if other participants of the roundtable, I mean, those attendees who could join, you can use the chats, right? You can use the chat and to write the comments or questions.
I think, Alexander, maybe you should ask people specifically, because it feels like like a student seminar, you know, everybody is probably waiting for the teacher to ask direct questions.
But this is special. Yeah, this is a specific question that probably not everybody knows much about. So that's.
But
that's
I mean,
why
I can say on my part, very simply that
yeah.
I don't feel I am in position to discuss the Ukrainian church first because I'm not an expert. I don't have access to primary data. Second, that I'm Russian, and so I'm keeping silent because I feel I'm not the one who is going to open the floor. So that's why I would be very happy for somebody maybe sharing more expertise on this issue.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe Vyacheslav, because Vyacheslav is going to present this book in after we finish with the roundtable. But still, maybe you have some ideas to start with. Still on or Nadezhda or Sergey.
If I may, I would like to suggest that Dr. Bremer might begin here, because we probably all read his fascinating correspondence with our colleague Viktor Yerevsky on the issues pertaining to the relationships between the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Orthodox Church of Ukraine and the role of the state there. So I think probably Dr. Bremer would be a very logical first speaker on that issue, and then we can all probably contribute our 2 cents to that discussion.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay,
well, yeah.
We found a teacher who called me. No, I'm happy to talk about that, but I think, or it was my impression that all I can say is well known, but perhaps it's not to everybody. So the first, sorry, the first question about how the war sharpened the distinct religious identity, I think it's very clear that it did sharpen them, and there is research from the time before the full-scale invasion about people, for example, and I've published also on that, people who alternated in visiting churches from both denominations, the OCU and the UOC, and I think that almost completely stopped. Now it's and also we know also stories about people who even did not exactly know to which church their own parish and their own church belonged. But that is now over. Now it's very clear, due to the war, due to the developments within Ukraine, and also due to the measures the Ukrainian state undertook. And that is above all the law, which was signed into effect in August last year, which it was always discussed for months. It was discussed as a law to ban the UOC, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which was a part of the Moscow Patriarchate at least until May 2022. Now it has another name, but it is a law which bans the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine, which is more or less symbolically because there is no real Russian Orthodox parishes in Ukraine, and which opens the possibility to ban religious organizations, meaning parishes or monasteries or institutions, which are part of the Russian Orthodox Church. And that was discussed very much, and is now into effect with a 9-month delay, meaning that only from May 25, from next May on, it will be really possible to ban churches. I have the impression in the last month that there's a kind of standstill. No one is moving, so to say, also partly because of the international of the elections in the United States and what we saw after that, after Trump became president again, and all the political implications which we know and which we had to observe in the last couple of days and weeks. And there were attempts to make religion also a topic of this discussion of the relations between Ukraine and especially the United States. But because it's now unclear what will happen in this regard, I have the impression, for example, some deadlines already expired when the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine was due to make bylaws for how it can work to ban churches and so on, and therefore everyone is like waiting. We have single events, like some of you probably have heard about the case of the cathedral and other churches in Bukovina, in Chernivtsi, single attempts of takeovers from churches. It's very, very difficult to judge from distance about the real events, but in some cases it seems to be pretty clear. Interestingly enough, in the last times there were also some cases when there were votes in parishes about a transfer to the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, to the OCU, and the majority voted for staying in the UOC, which means that it was obviously a vote which was not staged, not manipulated, but it was a real vote. So for the time being, I would say it's we had in the last 2 years, since summer 22, actually we had a very strong state involvement. At the moment, everyone is waiting, is hesitating, because no one of us knows what will happen in the next days, weeks, and months, and that has its reflection also in the field of the relationship between the churches. Maybe so much as a short starting remark.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking about well, I'll give now the in turn the to somebody else, to Zuzanna probably. Zuzanna, are you now able to switch on the video? And Zuzanna?
No, I can't. I am
Not
like
yet?
you.
Yeah, Olga.
No,
Olga, can you?
You block me.
But we can
I
hear
can't.
you. But we can hear
Zuzanna, Zuzanna, your camera might have had issues with Zoom, because our Zoom shows everything goes okay, everything is on. So if it is possible for you, I believe, could you speak with no video?
Yeah, for sure. It's not a problem.
That's okay
Yeah.
then.
Okay, Zuzanna,
Thank you.
do you want to continue to discuss this issue about the Ukrainian side, from the Ukrainian side? I mean, or no, that's what you were going to, or Zuzanna?
Yeah, I'm here. So thank you for this introduction. Okay, I haven't made research in Ukraine. And what I can say from my perspective, so from what I do and what I think, I'm not sure if we have raised this problem during the first section, I mean about Ukrainians and the religious life in Poland. I mean, because in our roundtable, we mostly ask about the situation between Ukrainians and Russians and both churches, but they are also in relations to other churches. In Poland, we have like both Greco-Catholics, Ukrainians, Orthodox from both churches. And I think that these relations are also very important, because we see how much the Ukrainian society is changing. So this is something that I wanted to say something more about. I have no huge expertise, but preparing for this roundtable, I checked some data and discussed to some people. But to add something about the situation in Ukraine, what was said, because in my project so in my current project, and my former project, I cooperated with Andrei Fert, who is Ukrainian. He is all the time during the whole conflict in Ukraine, in Kiev, and he made a research, very field research, I mean, on the changes of the religious life It was sponsored by ZOIS, so his expertise can be available from the ZOIS website. What was interesting, it is not this macro perspective that we could just hear, but it's this very micro, means how the situation and approach of people is changing and how they are dealing, particularly people who are belonging to the Russian Orthodox Church, to the Moscow Patriarchate, yes? These people, how they are struggling with this situation and how more and more,
that's very important, to look at what's going on the grassroots level indeed, because we, from the one side, sorry for interrupting, we have this kind of institutional developments from one side, but also there are those people that Katie Wenner once called the just Orthodox. So, who didn't think much about their belonging, but now with the development of the last 3 years, definitely have to somehow to make some kind of choices, and this is kind of interests me very much what's going on this level. So if you have some ideas on what's you can witness from the Polish, material, that would be great.
So,
or referring to what Andrei Fert and other scholars in Ukraine did in the last few years.
Yeah, so what I would say on this, like, let's say persona and this lived religion level, yeah, what I think is important and what confirms my observation here in Poland as well as from what Andrei observed while making interviews with believers in the parishes in Ukraine, is that people try to, like, simplify to the extreme. People try to distance from the politics and to concentrate on the religious life, because the conflict in Ukraine concerned some very important saints, which is like Alexander Nevsky and Tsar Nikolai II, and he shows, like, these are very militarized and used like sons and very problematic. They became with the war, and that's why, like, religious people have various strategies to escape and to somehow let's say, like, put this so popular sons hidden them somehow. And but many of them, while explaining why they are still, like, venerated these sons, they say that it is because of the religion, and this lived religion, I think, is very important. So they try to separate from the politics, and it is exactly what we can see in Poland. So I haven't made research among Ukrainians, but I am, like, involved and in discussion with my colleagues, particularly Anna Wilegała, who is making a huge project on the Ukrainians in Poland, on this huge wave of refugees. And what she said, there is, so even though they make nearly 300 interviews, there were only a few people who said that they are believers, and it is, like, really, we don't see them very often, even if you have some protests and protests, I mean some events that Ukrainians participate, we don't see, like, religious people more visible. But what I think is even more interesting, when I talk to the parishes here in Warsaw, there is like they are a part of they became a part of the community. They are not more visible. Yes, they don't try to make to show themselves very in the community, and it looks that there is let's say there is no conflicts for sure. That's what was said between Ukrainian and Russian Orthodox believers, so here in Poland. But we need to say that they are not so many, because most of these people simply don't follow, like they don't. It is like very personal level. So that was interesting. Yeah, the situation in our country.
Okay, some more considerations on that, on the distinct religious identities and how they are affected by the war, and what are the trends in this sense. Maybe somebody also who could have been involved in some research or referring to some colleagues who have access to the Ukrainian field. If not, I will.
Alex? Okay.
Yes, Nadia.
I wanted to share some preliminary fieldwork results from Western Ukraine, from Zakarpattia specifically, where we were this past weekend. The most interesting thing to me was that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church are both roughly divided for the majority position. They each have a clear, like between the two of them, they are by far the largest in the field. And that may be why they speak about one another in a relatively neutral way. The representative of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, to whom I spoke, was actually much more hostile about the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And I think this is connected to the fact that the Orthodox Church of Ukraine is in such a minority situation in both Mukhacheva and Uzhgorod. The Ukrainian representatives of the Orthodox Church in those areas are kept out of public civic rights, so they are not invited to take part in public ceremonies. And along the lines of representations, iconographic representations in churches, this was something mentioned both by Christina Stückel in her talk and Zuzanna. It was interesting for me to see that in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church Cathedral in Mukhacheva, which has relatively new iconography in its frescoes, they have people like the new martyr Elizabeth, i.e. the sister of Alexandra Fyodorovna. They have Serafim Sarovsky. They have the martyred Metropolitan Vladimir Kievsky, who is problematic from a Ukrainian national point of view. And especially interesting to me was that they have Matrona Moskovskaya, but without the word Moskovskaya. So you see, it just Matrona, it's the iconography who it is, but it doesn't have the word Moskovskaya. I mean, I can get into technical observations about the fact that both the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church that we attended and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church that we attended both served in Church Slavonic with Greek pronunciation, not Ukrainian. This includes the Greek Catholic Church. But suffice it to say that there are, I mean, we're going to be writing this up, and so, but this is just a preliminary thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Some more ideas on that, or some more references, maybe to some research recently done, or some kind of feeling of what's going on. Yeah, I assume that not many of us could have access to Ukrainian field anyway. So, and that's a pity we don't have the Ukrainian scholars here.
If I may, Alexander, jump in,
yes.
and I very much appreciate Nadezhda's observations, and indeed what's going on in the liturgy and iconography is of great importance, and some of it shows, of course, it's all very regional, even in the western regions of Ukraine, the Lviv region and Zakarpattia would be very different for a variety of reasons. But in general, this is a situation when identities are being constructed, and everything is very fluid, and the shared legacies still are there. It's more anecdotal. I'm following some of the groups that try to in a way, build bridges between the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, such as Софийское Братство, for instance, the Sophia Brotherhood, and it includes people from both jurisdictions. And there was a very, very remarkable video of a new version of the cherubic hymn that was sung very beautifully by young priests and in Ukrainian, which is very important in terms of the language of liturgy. So it's a clear attempt to at further Ukrainization of liturgy. But then the camera moved a little back, and above the prestol, the altar table, there was an icon of the Августов miracle, which is a World War I icon about which I was going to talk a little bit later, the one that was presented by Patriarch Kirill to Viktor Zolotov on Sunday of Orthodoxy in 2013. And so there is this imperial icon connected to the purported miracle in Eastern Poland in 1914, and a church that is clearly trying to sort of Ukrainianize its identity, still using that icon from the Russian imperial heritage. So yes, these identities are in flux very much. But the second remark that I was going to make is that relates to the role of the state, the issue that Dr. Bremer brought up. And I would like to make like two points. One is when we speak about Ukrainian churches, we need to broaden the scope and not to limit our discussion just to the territories that remain sovereign and unoccupied. There is a situation of Ukrainian churches on the occupied and annexed territories. And even the discussion of religious freedom and violations of it would benefit very much by including what's going on in the occupied territories. And I think that's a deficiency. There is a certain deficiency of focus in the international community and in the scholarly community, with much focus on the situation of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church inside free, unoccupied Ukraine, and much less focus on what has happened with it on the occupied territories. And what has happened with it? It has been annexed. Basically, it has been annexed. It ceased to exist. It's now Russian Orthodox Church. How about religious freedom? What happened to Ukrainian Protestants on the occupied territories? They have been purged completely. What happened to the Greco-Catholic Church on the occupied territories? There is none anymore. What happened with the Ukrainian, with the Orthodox Church of Ukraine? It doesn't exist. So I think we really need to keep talking about Ukraine as Ukraine, which includes territories that hopefully are temporarily occupied, and consider the situation with religious freedom in this much broader context. And also in terms of the situation with religious freedom, there is this tradition that is best exemplified by the Pew Research on religious restrictions, when hostilities, limitations to religious freedom are subdivided into two major groups. One is state restrictions, and one is societal restrictions and hostilities. And so some countries are high on state restrictions and some are high on societal restrictions. And usually those who are high on the former are also high on the latter. That is, when state is very restrictive, there are also sort of hostilities from below. What I would suggest that our discussion of the relationship between the churches and of the situation with religious freedom in Ukraine in general would benefit if we consider that there is a considerable gray zone between the two. So in my humble opinion, the law that basically presumes prohibitions on religious organizations affiliated with the with Russia, essentially, is far less restrictive than some of the practices on the ground. So, for instance, the horrific situation in some of the cities where zealous activists basically take over the churches with tacit or not so tacit approval of local authorities. Well, how do you classify them? Are they state restrictions or hostilities, or are they societal restrictions or hostilities? If the head of the local administration turns a blind eye on what's going on, is it a state restriction or is it a societal restriction, etc.? So I think that a lot of what is said about the policies of the Ukrainian state pertains either to the societal hostilities on the ground, carried out very often by small groups of activists with tacit support of local authorities, or to that gray zone. And again, I think this focusing on it that way might help us to be a little less unjustly critical of the position of the Department of the of ethnic ethnopolitics and freedom of conscience and all that. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have the gray zone, as Slava was saying, and we have quite a few different, cases of different kinds across Ukraine, including the occupied territories, which is extremely important, I guess, to really think about and to include in all our considerations, because we don't know, or we do know what's going on there, more or less. And also the Western Ukraine, of course, is different, as Nadia was saying, and also the Ukrainian refugees in Poland, according to Zuzanna, were trying to be politically neutral, not kind of going to accurate discussion about these political identities, these religious identities, and things like that. So, and also, yeah, so that's quite a complex situation. Maybe somebody else, maybe Sergei or Sergei Chapnin or Mikhail Suslov. We will move in a minute. We will move to the Russian case, to Russia, to the Russian Orthodox Church, as well, as we have a couple of questions on that for the roundtable. But I wanted to be sure we have some more considerations about Ukraine from other than what we have heard. Are there some other contributions to that?
Thank you, Alexander. Yes, I would like to say a few words. Well, first of all, it's great to see friends and colleagues here. And
sure.
I think, speaking about the gray zone, I think there is another gray zone also, I think quite important, understanding the Orthodoxy in Ukraine. And it's the canonical gray zone in which the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is now. And maybe you saw recently on the internet the pages from the official calendar of the Russian Orthodox Church, where the Metropolitan Onufry is listed as a permanent member of the Holy Synod of the Russian Orthodox Church. And that was considered to be the confirmation that Ukrainian Orthodox Church is still a part of Moscow Patriarchate. But this is clearly a misinterpretation, because there are two different positions. One is the position of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which proclaimed its independence from Moscow Patriarchate, and that was the official decision of the Council of the Ukrainian Church. And no canonical action followed. So from the perspective of Moscow, actually nothing happened. because the only reason for the Russian Orthodox Church to exclude Ukrainian Orthodox Church from wherever, from its status and consequently in the calendar, is the decision of the local council of the Russian Church to exclude and grant Ukrainian Church and grant it autocephaly. And we know that it won't happen, at least in the nearest future. So it's clearly a gray zone. Another important point, I think, is it's a kind of general observation, is that we used to speak about three Orthodox churches in Ukraine, and that is the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, and the Greek Catholic Church. But I think now we have to speak about four churches in Ukraine, and that's about the occupied territories, because it's clear now that all the dioceses, all the structures, ecclesial structures on the occupied territories are directly under the Patriarch of Moscow. So it's, and in fact, it's another gray zone, because there are no clear regulations to do that. So it's a kind of violation of the status of the Russian Orthodox Church, yet they could be kind of a justification from the perspective of the canonical decisions back in 1920s, when the dioceses that lost their kind of direct connection and kind of communication with their center, with the metropolia, could be self-governed and join other, so to say, kind of even other jurisdictions or other change its kind of metropolitan or patriarch, kind of directly be under the patriarch. So I think that's really a complex situation. And I think another thing that should be mentioned, that there is no perspective of the dialogue between the two churches, I mean the EOC and OCU. And it's clear that both sides are not ready for this dialogue and are not preparing for this dialogue. So the only, for the moment, the only group that is kind of promoting the dialogue and cooperation is this Sofiskaya Bratstvo, the Sophia Brotherhood that was mentioned by Vyacheslav. And that's important, and it's and in fact this is the only kind of grassroots initiative that is trying to deal with this issue. So it's the place where most probably the vision of unity will be shaped out. So I think we have to keep our eye on what's kind of going on within the Brotherhood. Though they are not that public as they could be, there are some obvious problems with publicity that they have. But anyway, it's an extremely important initiative for the future of the Orthodoxy in Ukraine. Thank you.
Sergei and Slava, just for precision, how important, how big is this initiative? How it's working? How many people are involved, and what? I mean, the Sophia Brotherhood.
Well, I think it's just a few dozens, so it's rather small, but they are kind of intellectuals and priests, laypersons and priests from both churches. And yes, I think the numbers, for the moment, numbers are not that much important.
Yeah, if I may, yeah, I have no way of saying how many are in the actual Brotherhood and how many are sort of silently supporting, but there are also other groups and digital sites that are working in the same direction. I would say that the Open Orthodox University, Father Georgy Kovalenko's initiative pretty much works in the same direction, that there are some sites like Dialog Tut is another one, and there is also support from outside of the churches, from civil society to a kind of dialogue. And recently, for instance, I know that Natalia Vasilevich is Belarusian, but she's very much sympathetic of what's going on in Ukraine, and she made the statement that wouldn't it be nice if the Orthodox Church of Ukraine refused to serve in the temples that have been forcefully occupied by activists. Indeed, so there isn't the acts of that break the law, and essentially it's very clear that these are illegal acts, these occupations of churches. They are not necessarily welcomed by civil society in Ukraine. And also another thing that is, I think we need to take into consideration is that the model of the transition of specific religious communities from one jurisdiction to another presumes very clearly delineated membership in the communities. That is, like, it's supposed to be clear who are the members of a specific parish. And if this were, say, in an Orthodox parish in the United States, that would be clear. Someone who comes to confession and communion at least once a year, who contributes financially, etc., they are allowed to vote on parish assemblies. But I don't think that this is the situation is that clear in Ukraine, and especially perhaps a little more clear in the Western regions, but not as clear in other regions. And that complicates this even from a legal point of view, this procedure of transition, etc. So that also has to be taken into account.
I would like.
Thank you. And now Thomas, please.
May, yes. Now it's very interesting. We have a couple of points. I want to come back to the issue we had earlier. First of all, we spoke about the material thing, and we have the material side. And what I talked in my introduction was much more political side, or church politics.
Sure.
And also we have now, by Sergei, we have also the canonical side. So I think it's important to see that we are talking about different layers, and also what we saw in Nadia's and Vyacheslav's and contributions. It's very, very important to see how that works in Ukraine in different regions. There is no one situation all over the country. It's very, very different in different regions. If you look at the statistics, you see that you have regions where one of the two Orthodox churches is in fact not present at all, and the other is the overwhelming majority, and the other way around in other regions. So it's not what we can say is not valid for all Ukrainians. That of course refers also to what you mentioned about the temporarily occupied territories. I completely agree. That is, there is no religious freedom whatsoever. The problem is they do not claim to be a democratic, open society. And to say the new Ukrainian law is less restrictive than the practice there is true, but that's not a criterion. That doesn't make the law good, because it's very easy to be less restrictive than the Russian occupation authorities. So therefore, I would say it's still we should and we have to discuss the law, but not, and we should, I'm completely agree, we should discuss whole of Ukraine, the whole territory of Ukraine. But there is attention. You said there is almost no attention in the international community. If you read the reports about the High Commissioner for Human Rights of the United Nations, you see that it's 3/4 is devoted to the occupied territories and 1/4 to the rest of Ukraine. because there are also some cases, it's not only about religion, about human rights, but the vast majority of all cases in terms of religion and in terms of other human rights is in the occupied territories. And just a short remark to what we had at the end. I don't want to occupy too much, to take too much time. There is, both churches have very clearly in their bylaws who is a member of a parish. And the problem is that the law about shifting parishes is not very clear. It says only a member of the parish has the right to convoke a meeting, any member, not only the priest, any member, and you need a 2/3 majority in a vote. No? And for example, the Orthodox Church, no, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church says, if I'm not wrong, I quote by heart, that everyone is a member who comes regularly to the services, who communicates, and who goes to confession and takes communion. So they don't say anything about membership fees, because that's different than in the United States or in many Western countries. But that means, none of the churches do have real lists of members. So in the end, it means the priest can say, I know you because you come every Sunday, or twice a month you come, and I don't know, I never saw you, I don't know you. In fact, the priest is theoretically is in the position to say who is a member and who is not, which makes the whole procedure even more complicated. We have cases, of course, where it's very clear. We have meetings where members of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine or Greek Catholics took part and voted, who clearly are not members of the parish. But in the concrete, or we had the case, for example, in Bukovina, where a meeting on the street made one vote for 3 churches in one vote. They decided about 3 churches. But there are very clear cases which are not real. But in many cases, it's very, very hard to say, because you have. I mean, I'm also suspicious when I read about it was like 210 yes and 0 none. That sounds not very convincing, but. Because of the weakness of the law and because the law is not very clear about who is a member, we have all these problems.
Well,
okay,
I think
thank you very much.
Speaking about the these decisions whether to join or one church or another, I think the problem is it's unclear who makes the decision, whether it's an ecclesial community or a kind of local, kind of territorial community.
In the law, it's very clear. It's very clear in the law. It says the ecclesial community.
Yeah, but the way why kind of locals that are not regular churchgoers are involved in voting is that, especially when the church was closed and reopened, or the new church was built, usually the local community is involved, and this is not only just the kind of the parishioners. So they claim to have the right of vote on the basis that they participated in kind of rebuilding the church or building the new church, and that is why their votes should be counted. And actually, quite often, the real ecclesial community cannot resist, because local authorities support this, so to say, second approach.
Thomas?
Yes. I see. Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, it's again.
Yeah.
The law is very clear, but I understand. I know this argument. Of course, it was our parents and our grandparents with their hands and with their money. Said, it's a church, so it's also our church. I understand that, but it's not according to the law. We have also very strange cases. I know concretely for one case in a town where a man built. He was a priest of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and he built a church with his own efforts and with help and so on a piece of land which was his property. And when he switched to the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, of course, the land was still his land with the church on it, so he could take his church with himself, so to say, he didn't need any vote, because it was on his private land, on his private property. No? These are cases which are not foreseen and not how should I say, not which you cannot define, so to say, with the law. But we find a lot of different, we find also, as you know, decisions by town councils, city councils or village councils, so not the ecclesial council, but the civil council, which say we, in the territory of our village, the activity of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is prohibited, which is against the law because the town council cannot decide about the existence of religious freedom, but it happens, and they close the church or take it, or sometimes very frequently, I know a couple of cases where they simply close the church because they don't have a community, or there is already an OCU church, they don't need a second one, but they don't want the existence of the UOC. So they make the shift. When it's done, they change the locks and close the church, and it doesn't function anymore. All this happens, but according, I mean, they made a law in 2019 of how shifts should happen, but it's very difficult, and especially, of course, now in times of war, to stick to the rules of this law.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I just wanted,
Thank
because I came just one phrase. I agree
Yes.
with also, there are more, it's not only the Sophia Brotherhood, there are more initiatives. All of them are very, very much, they try to be under the radar because I know there are even some, including bishops. But if it would become known who it is and where it is when they meet, it would be over. So therefore, they are not going to do this leadership of both churches. As you said, Sergei, they are not interested in dialogue and they are not preparing for it. But there are more initiatives in addition to Sophia. Sophia is the most visible, I would say.
Well, but at
Wait,
the same
I
time,
yeah.
for example, the Dialog Tut website is blocked by Ukrainian authorities. This is not a kind of public initiative or on the kind of national scale for Ukraine anymore. And there are, of course, there are local groups and kind of private discussions on that. But the only, I would say, systematic, what is important about Sophia Brotherhood is that this is the only systematic approach to the dialogue.
Okay, thank you. I just got a comment from one of the colleagues who are listening that the religions religions have become the tool of politicians. Religions have become the tool of politicians. So that's how can you relate?
Can you say that again? I didn't understand.
Religions have become the tools of politicians. So the politicians are using the religious differences and discourses and this kind of identities, trying to sharpen them in a way to attain some kind of political goals and things like that. So can we make this kind of generalization that is mostly true or mostly untrue? What do you think? How would we react to this kind of thesis? Well, on the level, on the grassroots level, there is a gray zone. There is a kind of a unclear situation. There are some kind of initiatives like Sophia Brotherhood, but that's a special one. Otherwise, it's not quite clear. There are some radical groups who are from one side or another, right? I'm not talking about the occupied territories, which is clear, but inside Ukraine there are some radical groups who are doing some kind of stuff. But that's kind of exceptional, maybe, or I mean, on the level, this is kind of grassroots level, and we have still these just Orthodox who are not very clear about how to identify themselves, or on the other hand, you have the political actors who are trying to politicize the whole thing. So, is it can we say like that? That would be oversimplification. What can you say?
Well, I think we shouldn't divide kind of everything. This is black and this is white. I think the situation is much more complex. Of course, the state is using the church. At the same time, the church is using the state. And it depends on our kind of current ideological preferences. So I won't go deep into that. Well, I still feel that as Russian, I have some restriction commenting, especially the kind of ideological side of this problem. But the churches are the Orthodox churches. They feel much more comfortable when they are supported by the church, and that means that they have to pay somehow for this support. And
by the state, you meant, by the state.
This is the case both in Ukraine and in Russia and in other countries.
Okay. So if somebody has some kind of additional comments on the Ukrainian side, on the Ukrainian situations, please do. Otherwise, or maybe somebody in the chat, I don't see actually very well. Just let me know if there are some new commentaries. If not, we let's switch to another kind of set of questions that is also formulated in the questions for the roundtable concerning the Russian Church. So the question was as follows: in what ways are the Russian Church's narratives included in the Putin regime's ideological and political discourse? What are the forms of involvement of the Moscow Patriarchate into the Russian aggression? And is there evasion or resistance against this policy within the Russian Church? So we heard in the before our roundtable, we had this panel, and there were talks by Ksenia and by Bozhidar Kolov, who made this kind of overall presentation on this kind of ideological narratives created by the World Russian Русский Народный Собор, and Alexei Zygmunt's about this idea of the paper on the holy war discourse and narrative in the Russian Church. So we had this kind of stuff. Maybe some of you, I was thinking about Mikhail Suslov, who was doing this research on similar issues. What can you say about that? So let's move to the Russian Church and this kind of ideological discourses around the war.
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Good. Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be present at the previous panel, so I don't know in all details what was discussed back then, but referring to what you just recapped on the idea of holy war, sacred war, I think that based on the research which I've been carrying out, I think that what is amazing is not that the Russian Orthodox Church partially is embracing the discourse of the holy war, but how rarely it does so. If you actually look at the way how the military priests are trying to make their messages to the soldiers on the battlefield, and by preparing my article for Dmitri's special issue, and now by way of getting prepared for this talk, I watched several hours of these videos of military priests delivering their preaches. Well, actually, that's very rare occasion when they refer to sacred or holy war. This is one point which I want to make. Why so? I think there should be at least 4 interpretations. One is that the holy war implies war, which is banned in the public discourses. The word war is kind of not welcome there. Yeah, should be special military operation. Second, I think that the way how the Great Patriotic War is constructed in public opinion, in the collective memory, as the main messianic event in Russian history, the sacred event. So I think that using the term Holy War to something else sounds almost like a sacrilege. So I feel like many people feel sort of reticence to embrace the discourses of Holy War when it does not come up to the Great Patriotic War. Thirdly, and perhaps more fundamentally, I think that conceptually the Orthodox theology of war resists to the idea of Holy War in general for a very simple reason, because Holy War is a sort of consequentialist theory. It's basically in the extension of the just war theory, just like just war theory justifies war by the hypothetical consequences of the war in the future. So Holy War does the same, but these consequences of the war are transcendental, like, I don't know, transforming infidels into Muslims, or fighting back the Satanists and preventing Antichrist from coming. So the Holy War theory is a consequentialist theory, and for Orthodox theology, it's something which is not actually welcome. The fourth point about that. On the battlefield, on the actual ground, when the military priests are delivering their messages, they have to sound convincing, because talking to soldiers is not like talking to babushkas in their parishes. And well, imagine this situation. They're basically talking to the soldiers that you have to kill in order to prevent Antichrist from coming. Does it sound convincing? Well, no, it doesn't sound convincing at all. For the soldiers, it doesn't sound convincing, because you have to have the same kind of religious background, same language. You have to embrace all the theories of katechon and so on and so forth. So the priests, military priests, have to deliver a kind of different message to the soldiers. So this was about the Holy War. I think that, yeah, and what I can observe from the expert literature and academic literature, we researchers, we jump at the nakaz of the World Russian Council from March last year with much pleasure. We jumped at the term Holy War, which was used back then. But in actuality, I think what is more interesting is what is not being said. And Holy War is not being said in too many occasions. Like, for example, on the 3rd of March, there was the special press conference, with Metropolitan Kirill and many other dignitaries representing this military side of the church. And the press conference was more than an hour, and they never ever mentioned the concept of Holy War at all. The second point which I want to make, this was really shocking. I did expect that the Holy War won't be very popular among the priests. But this second point was really something which gave me a pause. They never use the concept of the Russian world. Yeah, to be sure, the Russian Orthodox Church is a big institution with a huge inertia, and some portion of it still is capitalizing on the concept of the Russian world, but the military priests do not. And I think the reason why is because the Russian Orthodox Church is trying to align itself with the party line, with the mainstream discourses in the Russian political elite. And on this note, I would like to get the link to the article which I just published about the Russian Orthodox Church presence in Africa. The point is, on the occasion of creation of this African exarchate, the Russian Orthodox Church is trying to change its own rhetoric and to get rid of the Russian world concept, because it is becoming not an asset but a liability, because they want to make the Russian Orthodox Church the universal church, not the church of the Russian world. So yeah, this would be my two main observations. Perhaps a little bit iconoclastic, it's not intentional, but yeah, I think that we have to be more nuanced here. Yeah.
Mikhail, just for precision, when did you notice when exactly was this change in discourse, when the Russian world is, or is it still used at the level of the patriarchy? But you said that the military priests don't use it, and the Russian world, and this the sacred war. That's another story, of course. But from time to time you can hear this, but it's not. It contradicts, as you said, to the idea of специальная военная операция and this kind of stuff. And then there is a kind of contamination with the Великая Отечественная война. Although the use of this kind of this parallel is also being used sometimes, you know. So, but when well, most of the, you know, even in the panel that we had before this roundtable, I mean, in Alexei Zygmunt's, for example, paper, he referred to some kind of references and declarations and decisions that go back to 2022, to the beginning of the war. And I was thinking there was no time to discuss this. Was there some kind of change? What is the trend? Are there some kind of trends? And here you are talking about some kind of maybe some evolution of the whole discourse. Or can you just follow up with this?
Yeah, very briefly, I didn't have time actually to connect all dots, because one part of my research, that was the article about the African exarchate. And for this article, I noticed that when the exarchate was created, then people who stand behind that, they avoid the usage of the concept of the Russian world for a very obvious reason, because they wanted to represent Russian Orthodox Church. And now when I'm looking into the military priests, I suddenly found the corroboration of this previous finding that the Russian world concept is no longer in tune with the ideological winds which are blowing from the Kremlin. So yeah, I unfortunately I can't tell you I can't kind of reconstruct the exact evolution of this discourse. This is what I observe right now. I can perhaps spotlight one specific idea here, that in trying to universalize the language of the Orthodox Church, the Church is surely following the line of the political mainstream, because since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, especially since summer 22 and autumn 22, when the leadership, Putin included, tried to capitalize on anti-colonialism, on all these discourses against Western imperialism and so on and so forth, I can see a very clear chronology that after making this talk at Valdai Club in, I think it was October 22, Patriarch Kirill repeated the same idea, almost verbatim, a month after that. So I think that here the Church is clearly following the footstep of the state.
Okay, some more comments on that, especially on this this question of trends, maybe, or changes over time of the 3 years of the war, trying to make some kind of general observation on the trends. Maybe this or some other stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to restrict the question. So the question is again about these trends in the Russian Church and the military discourses and everything that is related to that. Yes, please, maybe Irina.
Sorry, did you mean
Irina? Yes.
Hello. Well, I was listening to the previous speakers, and that was very enlightening. And what concerns Mikhail's remark. I was just wondering to what extent we can speak about any monolith ideology of the Russian world even before these changes that you have pointed out. So to what extent we are dealing with the construction that has been used to present the ideology of the war, and to what extent we are just dealing with the kind of mix and match of different available symbols or kind of whatever is useful at the moment. So maybe we as scholars could pose this question, like, what is the subject we are dealing with? So rather than kind of analyze something that maybe doesn't exist in the first place. But also thinking about the justification of the war, I thought we need to maybe look at different audiences, because there are groups and the messages could be directed to different groups differently. So we have, like, I mean, of course, we can speak about general population, but surely, like, there are recruits. There are people who are being recruited to fight in the war, and how is message directed at them is one group. Another group are, I don't know, television consumers, and that's how one could look at the. And maybe there are different groups, like, how do you analyze this? But what I was recently curious about is a group, maybe not a very substantial group, but somehow quite interested, a group of, let's say, consumers outside Russia, and not only in Russian language, but in English. And there are some projects in like, I think it's part of the television Spas, which is in English. And the audience seems to be some recent American converts to Orthodoxy, and the cases they discuss are the American emigres to Russia who came to Russia for religious reasons, and so they're being interviewed. And so I think this goes to Christina and Dmitri's work on this Moralist International, and how, for example, these bridges between, let's say, different American Orthodox converts and Russian Orthodox are being created. So I just think it's an interesting area of research. I'm not dealing with it myself, but how the, let's say, these groups that might, support ideologically, Patriarch Kirill and the Russian Orthodox Church, how these groups have been nourished, and how the relationship would be nourished. So just, but
yeah. Thank you, Irina. Yeah. We'll move to this to the Orthodox outside Russia as well. Yeah. There is a question on that. So do you have something to say more, or you are done at the moment?
I could stop here, so just to give people.
Yeah. I wanted just to go back to the previous discussion. Everybody is saying that, of course, the addressees, the audiences, the consumers, so to speak, the consumers are different. So one thing, yes, I see that Vyacheslav is going to add. So let me finish. So I would put this question in this way, remembering what earlier in the panel that preceded our roundtable. people were saying, I remember Božidar Kolov and Alexei Zygmunt talking about this holy war stuff, holy war with Nazism, Satanism, the Antichrist, all these kind of discourses that you can find in some of the speeches and documents and things like that. Or so I was thinking, in what way these kind of stuff are really relevant in reflecting this kind of a broader perception of what's going on, you know, not at some particular, you know, pronouncements at the level of the patriarch or some of the radical followers or Всемирный Российский Народный Собор and so and so, but on the broader level, do we have some kind of possibility to follow and to see what's going on this kind of broader level? How relevant these discourses about the struggling against Ukrainian Satanism and all this kind of stuff, how relevant are they for the broader public or Orthodox public, so to speak? So that's the question that I had when I was listening the talks at the panel. So yeah, maybe you can comment on that. But now I give the floor to Vyacheslav, who was going to say something. Yes, Slava, please.
Yeah, I appreciate this, and I apologize. Probably I have taken too much time from this panel, but I was going to make a comment and share some observations that I think are also maybe relevant to this. My comment is that in trying to understand the role of the Russian Orthodox Church in this war, we very often focus, and sometimes justly, on the relatively recent ideological and quasi-theological constructs, such as the Russian world, which I think has preoccupied the imagination of many scholars for probably too long, considering the relatively modest position that it has occupied in the discourse of the ROC recently. Or Holy War, I think, is more justifiably, and Mikhail Suslov conducted research on that. And I think, I didn't count, but I think even in the official speeches of Patriarch Kirill, Holy Rus is far more prominent than the Russian world. But even that is a 19th century sort of construct where this concept migrated from folklore to more official, refined discourses in the Russian Empire. But I think that sometimes we are preoccupied with this relatively recent and more superficial elements of the discourse of the church, and fail to pay more attention to more fundamental aspects of liturgy and iconography and even theology that may be very important and very telling for in our attempts to understand the role of the church. And so I would like to call your attention, for instance, to one episode that was noticed broadly, but few people actually tried to dig in depth, and I did. And partly what I'm going to say is based on a paper that is already published on the from the conference in Lviv, which I attended in 2023. So here it is. I'm going to talk briefly about this famous, or perhaps some would say infamous, can everybody see this?
Yes. That's
yes. So probably everybody remembers this episode, March 13, 2022, when Patriarch Kirill gifted the icon of the Theotokos to Zolotov, and Zolotov, for some reason, chose to apologize for things not going as quickly as everybody hoped they would, because the Nazis were hiding behind the backs of women and children, etc. And that was rightly taken by many to mean that the Orthodox Church has blessed the war, etc., etc. But I was interested in this icon and decided to dig a little bit deeper, and just to anticipate what I'm going to say at the end of this short presentation is like an up-close picture of this icon. Those who are familiar with the theology of iconography and Orthodoxy would probably find this icon very unusual, and rightly so, I would say. So the icon was given to Zolotov and placed in this temple, and I like the name of this temple, the Prince Vladimir Church of Rosgvardia in the Dzержинский district of Balashikha, as Walter Benjamin, or Walter Benjamin as he is known in the United States, used this term unintentional truth, and so here it is, the Dzержinский district of Balashikha, and Prince Vladimir Church, which connotes both Kiev and Prince Vladimir, but also the Russian president whose patron saint is Prince Vladimir. And the colors of the temple are the colors of Rosgvardia, maroon and white, as the T-shirt of Rosgvardia. And so this was consecrated, and here is Zolotov and Maria Butina and Eduard Slutsky, etc., etc. So what kind of an icon is that? So this is the icon known as the icon of the Avgustov miracle, of the apparition of Mother of God, supposedly near the forests of Avgustov, which is in eastern Poland, during September, in August, September 1914. The apparition preceded temporary advances and victories of the Russian army, and then the Synod of the Russian Church, Synod of the Russian Church, just a second, how do I unshare? Was investigating this miracle and considering whether or not approve of the icon of the Theotokos. Long story short, this was a long process, and there were reports from the front line that the miracle didn't happen, and more credible reports that something similar to that miracle happened actually near the city of Mariampol, which is in Lithuania. But Mariampol was a city that had a bad rep at that time because of the so-called Mariampolskaya Izmena, where Jews were blamed for surrendering the city to the Germans. The Jewish mayor of the city was exonerated by the Russian court in 2016, but nevertheless, Avgustov was more sort of convenient. Mariampol or Avgustov, these are two cities in what then was the Suwalkskaya gubernia of the Russian Empire. So not far from Suwalki. Avgustov is to the south of Suwalki, and Mariampol to the north of Suwalki, and the distance between them is about 100 kilometers. And so, long story short, Patriarch Kirill gave to Zolotov an icon of a miracle that took place in what Russian strategists call the Suwalki corridor, and the narrow stretch of land that separates Lithuania from Poland. And one of the highest risk areas for potential Russian invasion, according to some appraisers of that risk recently. Even before that, the icon actually appeared. Just a second, we'll switch to another presentation. The same icon of the Gustav, miracle was placed in the main temple of the Russian armed forces. Here it is. And again, it's an unusual icon. The publication department of the Holy Synod in 2016 was vehemently opposing to its printing and publication, and it was just the intervention of the royal family, the imperial family, that changed that. Why am I saying that this icon is just visually important? Because in the Orthodox tradition, all icons of the Theotokos are focused on Christ or on God. She is either Haudegitria, the one showing the way, pointing with her right hand to Christ, or hugging and kissing the child, or praying, the Oranta. So there is a certain canon. And this is a unique icon because the Theotokos is actually pointing westward in the direction of the Russian offensive. My sort of digging deeper in this case brought me to the Byzantine roots of that and to the process of the Athenization of the image of the Theotokos in the imperial wars in the Byzantine Empire around the 11th century, when, according to the church historian and theologian Anthony Kaldelis, the Theotokos was increasingly perceived as an equivalent of the goddess Athena, who leads the troops to war, etc. So
Slava, we have not much time. So how do you use this interesting case to our discussion?
I find it interesting with just in conjunction with another icon, the Kaplunovskaya icona that was gifted by the Patriarch to then Defense Minister Shoigu, which is related to the victory of Peter the First over Mazepa, Hetman Mazepa, and the Swedes near Poltava. So you see two icons: Poltava, the victory over Ukrainians and Swedes combined, and then the Suwalki Gap, the miracle at the Suwalki Gap. So my conclusion from that is that the Orthodox Church, at least its leadership, has been intimately involved in developing and sanctifying the long-term strategy, military strategy of the state, and two, in that process, there is a certain level of twisting and paganizing of the theology of the Theotokos and perhaps of the broader theology of the church, which in turn has deeper historical roots that go back not only to the Russian Empire, but also to the Byzantine Empire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really an interesting case, a kind of a small paper within our discussion. Some comments on that or on other stuff? I'm moving to we still have 20-25 minutes, and I'm moving to the next question, a specific question. Maybe somebody can say a couple of words about that. What are the current positions and practices within the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, and what are the reactions from other Orthodox churches and other Christian churches worldwide to what's going on? Who can say, maybe Nadia, maybe somebody else about the
Yeah, I'll say a few words about the ROCOR in North America, and I will leave it to other people to comment on other jurisdictions or areas like Europe. And I want to stress that the version that most people probably know is something that Irina alluded to, something that Sarah Riccardi-Swartz wrote about converts to Orthodoxy, you know, far right, people who live in Appalachia and so on. But I would like to talk about actually a very different and a more typical kind of profile within the ROCOR, and to distinguish between the hierarchy and the laity and the priests. So when the full-scale invasion began in February of 2022, the metropolitan was Ilarion Kupral, a Ukrainian from Western Canada who actually only learned Russian when he went to the seminary in Jordanville. He tried to be extremely diplomatic and avoided saying something. However, a big scandal was caused by Bishop Gabriel Chimodakov of Montreal in Canada, who actually justified the invasion by saying, and I quote, "Russia was forced to take steps to protect itself from the neo-Nazis who were shelling civilians in Donbass for 8 years." So this, yes, this was an immense scandal and required a great deal of backpedaling. But this was not typical of the hierarchy. Much more typical was the argument that our flock is of Russian descent and Ukrainian descent and Belarusian descent. We don't want to take a position, being extremely cautious. I noticed a marked divide among the ROCOR community between people who are liberal and conservative, and it often broke down along the lines of whether people had a technical university education or a humanities/social sciences university education. The techies, the engineers, the computer people tended to be conservative. The humanities, social sciences, lawyers, professors, etc., tended to be liberal. The parishioners who had joined the ROCOR who were from Ukraine mostly left. This was extremely noticeable in the ROCOR parishes in the Northeast in particular. And for the Ukrainians who left, the big stumbling block was the commemoration of Patriarch Kirill in the service. Even though the ROCOR didn't introduce the prayer for Russia, they did introduce a prayer for the suffering Ukrainian land, but Russia was not condemned, and this was a problem. For the cradle Orthodox, for whom the identity had been a largely sort of amorphous Russian one, in the first year after the war, they switched to having, let's say, their fundraising ethnic festivals to calling them Slavic festivals as opposed to Russian festivals. But they have, in fact, since gone back to that. And the most remarkable thing to me was actually that on the part of the parish clergy, there was remarkable silence. One priest only told me that in the full-scale invasion began in February 2022, and in March 2022, the clerics of the ROCOR had their annual Gavenia, where they would come together and all confess and commune together. One priest stood up and said, "Should we not condemn Russia's attack on Ukraine?" There was complete silence. Nobody wanted to touch it, and so it was not condemned. So in short, the ROCOR has not taken a clear position. In the case of at least one bishop, the position that it took was negative. Foreign Affairs wrote an article about both the ROCOR and the Orthodox Church in Russia called Putin's Useful Priests, which was protested by the ROCOR spokesman, but it was protested only in general terms, saying our church is apolitical, we pray for peace in Ukraine, we do all we can to provide material aid for Ukrainian refugees and suffering people, we pray only for the leaders of the countries in in which we're in. We're a peace-loving church, and so on. But that is the position of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia and North America, at least.
Thank you very much. Maybe maybe somebody has
words.
some.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Actually, Archbishop Gabriel is still on the same position, and a few months ago he was with Alex Jones in his YouTube channel, saying the very same words as if he is reading. The only source of information for him is like kind of Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper or kind of Russian television. As for the kind of level of parishioners, I know that there were quite a few switches from Rokor parish to the OCA parish, if they are kind of anti-war and anti-Putin. But at the same time, there were switches from the OCA parishes, or if the priest has, and the majority of the parish, anti-war position, switch to the Rokor parish, which is kind of keeping silence officially about the war, but in practice, I would say it's a silent support. So we should say there are different types of silence, actually, both in Russia and outside Russia, very typical. So Rokor type of silence is the silence in support of Putin and Russia. And I should say that that was in October last year when I was for the Feast of St. Sergius in the Synod and the St. Sergius Church there. And it was surprising that without any formal reason, Metropolitan Nikolai, the first hierarch of Rokor, was celebrating the liturgy. At the end of the liturgy, he proclaimed many years, Mnogoe leta, to Patriarch Kirill. And when I was in the church, so that at that moment I left the church and moved to the hall, and there were quite a few people in the hall, kind of local parishioners, smiling, saying, "Well, you can't bear that." I said, "No, I can't." I said, "We too." Also there is a kind of opposition within the parishes, but they are in minority, and I think basically they are keeping silence. As for the just a few words maybe about other local churches, I think the reaction of the other local Orthodox churches is it's a catastrophe. It's another sign of the big, at least moral crisis within the family of the Orthodox churches, because very few bishops actually publicly condemned the war, condemned the Russian aggression. I would say maybe a dozen, not more. And of course, Patriarch Bartholomew. But again, what is interesting, all these statements from the bishops of the other Orthodox churches, they are, so to say, private messages, like some of them maybe could be done ex cathedra during the sermon, but yet there are no decisions of the synods of the churches on that matter. So, and I think nothing will happen. That's, so to say, that is fixed. And in a way, it's a victory of Moscow Patriarchate. Sorry to say that.
Do you think are there some exceptions that you may have among the churches, or are there differences, or they all keep silence in the same way?
Well, maybe the Polish church, I don't remember. Maybe the one of the minor church. I think the church in Poland made an official statement. But all other statements are more like a kind of personal statements of bishops and of course priests.
But I would say that the situation which you just described, Sergei, is in fact not just a result of the war, but it is a result of a longer split within world Orthodoxy, which came now to the surface because of the war. And it was many churches, and one must say objectively the majority of churches were very unhappy with the decision to give autocephaly to the OCU. So that caused the shift. The unhappiness caused the shift, and then was, one must also say, a problem. Then was Corona, so no way to convene something or so, and the ecumenical patriarch regards that the cause is resolved. There's no need for any action. Just wait until everyone joins or recognizes the OCU. And other churches will not do that. So I thought in 2018, when that happened, that we are, and I fear I'm right, that we are witnesses of something like 1517, when the Reformation, when we see a split, and there's no way, I don't see any way how it can be healed. And even if one would, so it's not so, I mean, these are two things which we have to make a difference. One is about the canonicity of, or let's say about the canonical situation in Ukraine, usually, and the other is about the war and the position of Kirill. People, yeah. I spoke to bishops from churches who told me, well, holy war, what a nonsense and so on, but as you say, they're not going to say it publicly, but most people agree, and even Greeks agree on the uncanonicity of the situation of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and the Orthodox Church, World Orthodoxy, does not have a mechanism to resolve it. We, as I'm Roman Catholic, we theoretically, at least, we think we have the Pope, and it's okay. It also doesn't work perfectly, but there's no such mechanism in Orthodoxy. And even if there was if everyone would agree to come to a council and to meet for a council, or some people proposed a meeting of the first synaxes, a meeting of the first hierarchs, most likely, in terms not of the war, in terms of the canonical situation, most likely the position of Moscow would get a majority. A majority among the churches and also a majority among the bishops. So it's maybe even better that it is no way to resolve it. And now you have two things mixed, which is the canonical situation in Ukraine plus the position of the Russian Church blessing the war, in fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Please more ideas about this part of our discussion, about the positions of the different Orthodox churches and actually other churches as well. And maybe somebody can say a few words about the involvement of religious minorities with the war, both in Ukraine and Russia. If there is no specific, ideas on those matters, let me just go over all the participants and to ask the participants to add anything that might be related to everything that we discussed, and maybe some more ideas and some more thoughts on that. But maybe Zuzanna.
Maybe, sorry.
Or Irina, yes.
Yeah, because I think I'll have to leave very soon, so I would just use an opportunity to.
We have actually 10 minutes left. 10 minutes left.
Very briefly, I just want to resonate with what Sergey and Thomas was saying, that these two issues need to be separated. One is the attitude to the war and condemnation to the war, and the other is the canonical problem and the issue between the relationship with the and Estonia is, of course, or the Baltic is a very clear example of this problem, that you can have not a large majority, but some outspoken clergy who are very clearly against the war and who support Ukraine and who will defend the canonicity of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Estonian Orthodox Church, and not agree with the attempts to bring, the Church of Moscow Patriarchate, autonomous church in the Baltic under the Patriarchate of Constantinople, and this is what is not visible from the outside, because these two positions are being equated, and that creates a serious issue that this canonical loyalty is being interpreted as support of the war. So that's what I wanted to say, and that's kind of looking, because in Estonia this situation is already 30 years old, and if before 22 one could speak about dialogue, like after 22, that has became more difficult, and that's what I think makes the situation a little bit similar to the Ukrainian case.
Thank you. Maybe is Zuzanna still here with us? I just can't see who is.
No, I'm afraid she is not.
Okay. So,
no, she's here. She's here, Alexander.
Yes, okay.
Zuzanna
Zuzanna
is here.
So, Zuzanna, maybe you can, you started,
Okay.
you started, maybe
Yeah.
you have something to,
Yes.
to
Yes,
add
I
at the
have.
end concerning this last issues that we discussed.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, guys, it's first time that I have such great, huge problems with being visible, because now I couldn't switch on my microphone.
No problem.
Yeah. So what I would like to say that was really fascinating what you said, and I was listening to you because you come from this macro perspective. I mean, from the churches and their relations. I'm not following at the moment this, but what I can say from my, let's say, some visits to different places for last time is rather this like very narrow and grassrooted processes. So what I try to tell you is that because the political situation in Poland is very clear, Poland is absolutely on the side of Ukraine, and we are in the war. There is no this dichotomy, I would say. That's why I told you that when you look on the behavior, I talked to some like believers. For sure, there are some conflicts, but not such great conflicts as you mentioned. Where in the societies when this like let's say the situation is not so clear about who is guilty and who is dictator. That's so in Poland, I think the political situation has such an impact that there is no this. All churches, I have impression, are on one side, but they do not discuss it openly. Of course, what we need to pay attention to is the tension, because Ukrainians are so many now in Poland that there are other conflicts which can affect. However, what I found super interesting, which is very grassrooted, and we do not know where it will bring us to. So for instance, when I visited Białystok, which is on the border, this is the big city on the border with Belarus, very close to there. It is a city touched very much by the Soviet repressions, because these were the eastern border lines. Many people were deported from that regions to the Soviet Union during the Second World War. And it is very, let's say, right-wing city. It is always that there is a problem with nationalism, very, very strong problems. Now the situation started to change. So there is a, let's say, very close relation with Belarusians. There is now a lot of Belarusians in this city due to the political situation in Belarus, but also there came a lot of Ukrainians. And you know what I could observe is, for instance, that there is a church which is very connected with the Poles, Sibiraks, so-called Sibiraks. So it means those who were deported to Russia, to the Soviet Union, who then returned and they tried to remember their memories. And now this is this church that accepted Ukrainians. In the Low Church, there is a Greco-Catholic prayer, and they can meet there. So that was very interesting why this church, even though there is so many, but it was visible that it was this dialogue was due to the common experience of deportation or, let's say, forced displacement. So that was the case. And of course, we don't find it on the border with Ukraine. So it is another, like, uses of religion. For many years, there were discussions about how to commemorate the victims of Volhynian massacre. And as you know from the political discussions here, it is one of these issues that they are very problematic. Yeah, and even now, even if Poland supports Ukraine 100%, the question about commemoration of the victims arrives, and we can see uses of religion now, because in Przemyśl, which is the city really on the border with Ukraine, on the private land, a huge, amazing, horrible, terrifying monument using like religious iconography was placed by some, let's say, very anti-Ukrainian nationalists, showing, provoking conflict. So I mentioned these two examples. They are very grassrooted. We do not know where they will bring, but we see how religion and memory are mixed. And one more example I would like to tell you, it's from my last year visit to Akmol in Kazakhstan, because that is also very interesting how the situation is changing among the Orthodox believers in the Central Asia. Yeah, so that in Akmol the situation is also that it is they have a church to the Akmo new martyrs, those who were women who perished in the Soviet camp Algiers, and now they are also on the one hand they are dealing, because it is the Moscow Patriarchate. On the other hand, they are trying to find a new place and a new to find themselves in this situation with this because there is a tension from the Muslim community living in the city, also regarding the political situation is going on. So what I don't know where it will bring us, but I think we haven't discussed it. These are some small observations, and probably it is only a moment, but it can bring to some new elements. And the last thing I would like to mention is an appearance of digital communities. So that was stressed by some, that because people, what you said, can't find themselves in some parishes, so they go to the digital.
Yeah, that's a very important another topic. I wanted to give a word right now to Sergey, who has maybe the last few words on some recent experience that he had.
Yes, thank you, Alexander. Just a few days ago, I received an information from Moscow that FSB agents are kind of literally hunting for Protestants, for small Protestant communities that are not affiliated with our major Protestant unions in Russia. So they are kind of independent, and that is, and because they are independent, they are dangerous to the Russian state. So according to the new Russian law, it's illegal now to gather for religious or whatever meetings, liturgies at homes or kind of in private houses. So most probably we will see, well, it doesn't mean that these Protestant communities are necessarily anti-war communities, but they are kind of out of our major unions, and that is already their kind of sin, or their crime.
Yeah.
So it seems that in the nearest future we will see quite a few cases with kind of closing down these communities, and maybe the investigations will be opened against.
Yeah, thank you for this update.
Pastors and members of this group.
Yeah. Thank you for this update. Yeah. So are there some very short last
Alexandra, excuse me for interrupting. We have a question from Božidar Kolov to
there was
address to
a quick
Irina and
question.
Sergey.
Yeah, the question was to Sergey and to Nadia, I guess, or to Irina.
He mentioned Irina and Sergey.
No, I think Nadia and Sergey, because Nadia was talking about that. Is there a split within ROKOR between the US and Europe? I remember, writes Božidar, Metropolitan Mark of Berlin had a quite unequivocal message early on. So very quick answer on that, if Nadia or Sergey can comment. The split between Europe and US.
It's hard to say because Metropolitan Mark doesn't speak for all of Europe. There is Irine in England whose position is also different. So I'm not sure, honestly.
Well, I don't see any real splits. Irine is really pro-Russian, pro-Moscow Patriarchate, better to say, and his statements on war are kind of rather controversial. But at the same time, on the parish level, they are. I know that there are more anti-war priests, ROKOR priests in Europe than in the United States.
More anti-war priests in Europe than in the United States. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much. We are out of time now, and we thank you for everybody